Hello everybody and welcome back to another devlog. Today I want to talk about how I made my game moddable and how anyone can really just go in and add their own items, their own textures, and make their own recipes. So we're just going to jump right into it. Also, thank you to the people who waited about a year for another video to come out. Although I might not be able to post videos that are as high quality or caliber as maybe I would have been able to in the past, I will be making more videos because that way people just know that, development hasn't just been completely stopped or just like abandoned or anything like that. Earthward is still very much in active development. Okay, and with that said, how exactly did I make my game moddable? It's fairly easy to hop into a game engine and then make something that someone else can play, but actually making something that people can change and edit and, make their own content, make user-generated content, that's something that usually takes a lot more development time and a little bit more of like a thought process and planning stuff out, because it's no longer just about you. You have to get into the perspective of someone who would want to mod the game. How am I going to format my code? How am I going to write these systems like this so that way they can handle user-generated content? Because think about what happens when there's user-generated content in a game. Typically, people make mistakes, right? They write code that's like probably not as performant, which would make sense because they don't actually know how the engine works. They don't know what would be the best thing to do in that given scenario. So what you have to do as a programmer or a game developer who is making a game with modding capabilities is you have to sort of account for all those things. Like, what if someone accidentally types something wrong? Is the game just gonna crash all of a sudden just because they misspell the name of something? Now, because I am using GameMaker to develop Earthward, this kind of was a challenge for me, because actually having code files and then including them in your project like a .cpp file or a .c file or something like that, you can't really do that without making some super advanced parser in Engine. It would definitely be possible, don't get me wrong. So my solution to this was to just serialize all of the inventory and all of the objects and all of the recipes and all of the player skins. I did this by using JSON data. JSON files are incredibly easy for anyone to really edit, and you can just hop in there and make a new item in maybe 5 seconds. It really doesn't take you that long. And for people who just want to add their own skins, they can go ahead and do that too. Just draw up a texture, go into the skins folder and place your skin there and create an associated JSON file with that skin so you can give it its name and then maybe cool properties or something like that. But JSON is definitely one of the better ways to do deserialization, because first off, you can actually edit it while the game is running without having to recompile the whole game. It also turns out that the compiling time for my project is a lot less now. The one downside is that when you're dynamically loading texture data, it uses more texture pages, and so the texture memory is just a little bit bigger than it was before. But it's really not a big deal because it's first off not a lot of extra texture memory to begin with, but it's obviously only loaded in once, right? I'm not dynamically loading in textures, throughout the game as the game is running. Everything is just loaded once at the beginning of the game. And so once that stuff is loaded in, it never has to really deal with that ever again. So it is super nice and performant as well. And then of course, whenever I want to change an item, I don't have to go into my code and be like, all right, where did I use this enum for my item ID over here? Or where did I, change the damage of this thing here? I gotta now go into each individual struct for all of my items. No, I just have a dedicated folder and subfolders for all of those items, and I can just go in there and really easily find them and edit them. It's set up in a way so that if the variable exists within the struct itself, and the variable also exists within the JSON file, so say I have a variable called healing power or something like that in our item, and then in my JSON I also have healing power over here, and I have it at 3 or something like that, then it'll automatically find that variable within the struct and it'll just set it to whatever the value was from the JSON. All of this data is stored in a global map, so I can just kind of access all of the information about items. When the game initially loads in all of these items, they're actually loaded in as archetypes. So the item doesn't exist just yet, but it exists within a map. And so when I create a new item, add one to the inventory, I will just clone that existing item from the archetype data. And so whenever I want to reload my items, I will literally just be like, okay, reload the items, rescan all the JSON files, and it will just overwrite those archetypes. So the next time that I make that item, it'll then just make a clone of that new data. It also means that whenever I want to make a new change to an item, I don't have to recompile all the code in my game and change some random magic number that's just floating around in my code. I can just have the game running and then open a JSON file, and I could just change the damage, press the reload button, and it just magically works. Maybe one day after the game is released, I'll go back and see if I can add some real proper scriptable modding capabilities, like you're coding in GameMaker language or C++ or something like that. We'll see if that's even possible. I don't know. I just feel like games that are moddable have a really strong sense of community because you have all this user-generated content and people are just like constantly sharing things. You know, even if the developer has like moved on to other projects, you've created something that people can build upon. That's why I wanted Earthward to be moddable to begin with. Even if it's not crazy moddable, say like Terraria or something like that, I think it's going to add a lot of value to the game. It also makes a pretty big difference for me as the developer because now I don't have to hard code all of my items. I can actually just do some basic scripting and just like punch in numbers here and there. Thank you everybody for watching. If you guys want to support this project and my future indie development work, you can go ahead and join me over on Discord or support me over on Patreon. Discord supporters and Patreon supporters get a Steam key for Earthward so they can help me beta test it before the game comes out. If you're interested, you can go ahead and check out those links in the description. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next devlog.